Welcome back. Today I have a deep dive guide on Blackwings, an Edison format staple. Now this deck can do everything. It's ultra consistent, it can do combos, control, swarms, it can just play a beatdown. So a lot of players love this deck for that very reason. It's just a very powerful deck. In this video we're going to go over deck lists, side decks, extra decks, strengths and weaknesses, anything that you need to know with interactions so that you can play this at a high level after this video. Let's check it out. Alright, we have the deck laid out here. We're just going to go through the names of the cards so you know what's in the deck. If you already know the names of all of these cards, feel free to skip to the point when the bar at the bottom is complete. So we have 3 Sirocco the Dawn, 3 Shura the Blue Flame, 3 Bora the Spear, 3 Kalut the Moon Shadow, 3 Blizzard the Far North, 1 Gale the Whirlwind, 2 Vayu Emblem of Honor, 1 Dark Armed Dragon, 1 Mystical Space Typhoon, 1 Heavy Storm, 2 Black Whirlwinds, 1 Brain Control, 1 Allure, 3 Jar of Greed, 1 Torrential Tribute, 1 Trap Dust Shoot, 1 Solemn Judgment, 1 Royal Oppression, 1 Mirror Force, 3 Icarus Attack, 2 Dimensional Prison, and 2 Bottomless Trap Hole. Now that you know the names of the cards, we can kind of get into why they're here and what they do. One exception I'll make is this can be a Yatagrasu, Legacy of Yatagrasu draw card. Jar of Greed does the exact same thing. I don't think it matters, but you could do whatever you'd like. This deck list has been kind of standardized by the amount of people that play it and how long it's been played, so most Blackwing decks will look almost exactly like this, maybe some interchangeable trap cards here and there with Deck Devastation Virus or Royal Oppressions. That is entirely up to your preference or your metagame that's at your area. So Blackwing Sirocco, he's like the captain of the crew. If only your opponent controls a monster, you can normal summon set this card without tributing. Once per turn during your main phase 1, you can target 1 Blackwing monster you control. Until the end of this turn, it gains attack equal to the combined attack of all Blackwing monsters currently on the field, except itself. Also, for the rest of this turn, you can only attack with that monster. So, Sirocco is very strong. Obviously, it's 2000 attack. You can just summon it or set it if your opponent has a monster, but the main thing that people can use it for is it's the best way to use the Black Whirlwind since you have to search something with less attack than the card you summoned. Secondly, it allows you to just get ridiculous damage with Bora mostly, because you'll just use its ability to target your Bora and the Bora will gain 2000 attack. Sirocco is super strong. The other well, I guess all of the monsters are excellent, which is why this deck is so strong, but Shura the Blue Flame, if it destroys a monster by battle, and, it has to survive, remain face up on the field, you can special summon 1 level 4 or lower Blackwing monster from your deck, but it is, with 1500 or less attack from your deck, but its effects are negated. This will 99% of the time become a Vayu coming out of the deck, but sometimes you might have to get a different card, or if you're going for more damage, you can summon a Kalut out of your deck, something like that. Next, there's Bora. 1700 attack is pretty good. If you control a Blackwing monster, other than Bora, you can special summon it, so that's already excellent effect. But then they just sprinkle on some more goodness with the ability to deal piercing damage to defense position monsters. Like I was mentioning before, you can go Sirocco and Bora, and then just destroy a token for millions of damage, or if they have a Raikou, it didn't matter because they're taking so much damage. Next we have a battle attack modifier, Kalut. You could discard this during the damage step, and a Blackwing monster you control gains 1400 attack till the end phase. So this is obviously super strong. There's a reason why Honest is limited, or semi-limited. So this is at 3 just because it's only 14, I guess. They thought it wouldn't be too crazy, but it is in fact crazy. You can also use this. Like, Shura can get this for extra damage, but also if you're playing Deck Devastation Virus, you can use it on your guy after you've used Kalut. Next we have 3 Blizzard. So this, when you summon it, you target a level 4 or lower Blackwing monster in your graveyard and special summon it, often a Bora or Shura. But its effects are not negated, which makes it pretty good when you need to get a quick Gale in there, maybe a Shura if you think the Shura will live, so you can use it on the next turn. But it's a level 2 tuner, so you're making quick level 6s with 1 summon, very strong. Other decks are jealous. Next we have Gale. Gale is one of the best monsters. It's at 1. Basically, if you control a Blackwing monster other than Blackwing Gale the Whirlwind, you can special summon this card, much like Bora. Once per turn, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. The target's attack and defense become half. So that is super strong and allows you to get through a lot of big stuff, like you can just kill Stardust Dragon quite easily. But the main thing is it's a level 3, so this is how you'll be making level 8s mainly. When you go Sirocco, search like a Gale if you don't already have it, or you can use it with like a bunch of other like random ones if they're negated from Shura. You can synchro with these kind of things. But it's your main way of making level 8, level 8, and its effect is just excellent. Next we have 2 Vayu. So Vayu, Emblem of Honor, is a card that a lot of people mistake and get wrong with the effects, but we're just going to go over everything to do with this card right now. If this card is face up on the field, you cannot use it for a synchro summon. If this card is in your graveyard, you can remove it from play, +1 non-tuner Blackwing monster in your graveyard. Special summon 1 Blackwing synchro monster from your extra deck whose level equals the total level of the removed monsters. The effect of the synchro monster is negated. So you're going to use this in combination with Sirocco to make free Armed Wings, the card I will show you in the extra deck in a moment. But the main thing is you can't synchro with it when it's face up on the field. However, Shura's effect, when they pull out a guy, you get this, it's negated. So you can make a Catastor or an Android with it. And you can also use it to make another, your level 8s if you need to, and it survives. So it actually has a couple uses, but overall, in my opinion, you're just going to get this from Ashura, or you're going to use it for an Icarus attack. He's not really a good card to have in your hand, unfortunately. And lastly, Dark-Armed Dragon, Mystical Space Typhoon, Heavy Storm, very simple. 2 Whirlwinds. So when you summon a Blackwing monster, after its resolution, you can search a monster with less attack than the monster you just summoned. So the best way to utilize this card is to basically summon down. So you're going to summon Sirocco. Sirocco will get Ashura. Ashura could get a Bora. A Bora could get a Blizzard or Kalut. And the only time you want to switch that up is if you need a card of these of a different attack, because if you continuously go down, you just keep getting pressure, keep searching your deck, keep thinning your deck, which is why this deck also has a larger monster count than I think the average Edison deck. So that's basically what you want to do, but this is also, you'll use this in combination with Sirocco to be able to make a Stardust, which is very important versus Lightsworn, for example. But this is one of the reasons why this deck is so powerful. No other deck, I think, really has this level of searchability, and it's a face-up spell, so you don't have to wait. You can just play it, summon your guy, very, very strong. But the main aspect to get the most value out of this is to summon and go down with as you go, instead of just skipping maybe Bora and Shura and getting a Blizzard. It's important that you try to go down whenever possible. We have Brain Control, Allure. Allure, you have plenty of darks, and all of them are played at 3, except for these couple here, so Allure is almost never bad. So these people will wonder why there's Jar of Greeds if you don't play in the metagame too much, but basically what happens is your opponent can have Dust Tornadoes or their own Icarus attacks, including Heavy Storm, which you're going to set a couple, so this is a good bait for those cards, and then on top of it you can chain it. So if your opponent Icarus is you and you have one of these and something else, you can chain this and your other card, like your own Icarus, and you don't minus, which is excellent. And then also it confuses your opponent. You know, you set 3 cards, one of them is this, or maybe even 2 can be this, and your opponent just thinks, wow, he has 3 back row I have to fight through, but in reality, you just have this. It also allows you, if you don't open the Icarus attack on the turn 1, which is why this deck is also broken, you know, you could set this and your opponent will still have to respect the Icarus. Next we have Torrential. You don't mind, you have multiple monsters. Trap Dust Shoot, very, very strong card. Lets you like see what searches you need to make or what synchros you need to make based on their hand. Solemn Judgment, Rel Oppression. So Rel Oppression is one of the most broken cards in Edison format, and it just stops all special summon monsters. And you'd think with this type of deck that Oppression would be bad. However, I'm going to explain some interactions and some like tips you can do at the end. So if you need to know about Rel Oppression and you want to know right now, you can go there. Otherwise, let's continue and then we'll get there. Mirror Force and 3 Icarus Attack. Now, Icarus Attack tributes 1 winged beast type monster, which is basically your whole deck, and you can destroy up to 2 cards. Now, this tributes its cost. So if you summon, let's just say Ashura, and they play Bottomless Trap Hole, you can chain this, your guy will dodge the Bottomless Trap Hole, and you'll have to select 2 targets to destroy, which is super good. But one of the reasons why this deck is so powerful is because if you go first and you can set this, you're forcing your opponent to only play 1 card, or if they set multiple cards, willing to take the gamble that you miss on whatever's important. So this is a ridiculous card, of course. And it allows your opponent to, or allows you to stop pushes that other decks couldn't because maybe they only have 1 Deep Prison, but you could have a Deep Prison in this, and that's 3 cards you can destroy. Very, very strong. And lastly, just a few defensive cards, 2 Dimensional Prison and 2 Bottomless Trap Hole. These are just standard good cards that go in pretty much every deck. Well, your side deck is going to depend mainly on what your metagame is in your local area. But generally, the side deck can all be kind of the same because you're more prepping for the matchups and the stuff that your deck already struggles against. So luckily for you, the main deck just has a lot of answers for most decks. Like you have Oppression, you have Kalutes, so they can't make big monsters. You have a lot like Icarus Attack for control decks and stuff. Very, very unfair for sure. So you can side a Starlight Road, and this Starlight Road can just be like for Blackwings, Lightsworn, you like anything with massive destruction, Icarus Attack, Judgment Dragon, any decks like Debris Dragon into Black Rose type shenanigans. You can side a Skill Drain. Now Skill Drain is also pretty good because most of your effects, like you could side out your Blizzards, and then all of your other effects are just good beaters with Kalute. Very, very strong stuff. You side a Lightning Prisoning Mirror. You can side this for Fairies, Lightsworn if you're really worried about it, but frankly, your deck is quite powerful. I don't think that Lightsworns are good unless they run super hot versus you. Soul Release can be used for any Frog matchups, Hero matchups. You can use it for Lightsworn. Anything that requires a lot of graveyard zombies, maybe. You can side a Kaiku. Now, Kaiku is an excellent card because it stops Vayu Turbo from banishing their cards when it's face up. And 1800 is pretty hard for them to get through. And your deck plays a fair amount of traps, so you'll be able to protect this kind of card. Definitely a strong inclusion in some side decks. We have Pulling the Rug. It's just excellent versus Monarchs and mainly Caius. We got a Mind Control. You play a significant amount of tuners, so you can just take their stuff and synchro with it, and they just feel sad. You can side more Royal Oppression because your deck is dumb like that. You could side Fossil Dyna. Now, Fossil Dyna is an excellent card when you're pushing for game. It's great against frogs, frog heroes, frog narcs, these kind of things. You're just going to want to summon this when you have a guy and push for game and they can't Gores you either. You're going to maybe want to DD Crow. DD Crows are just excellent in general for, targeting down those Treeborn frogs, Lightsworn monsters, anything like that, Vayu Turbo. But you don't really want to side more than 2 because if you see multiple, it's not very good. You want consistency with drawing your cards. One of the reasons why this deck is so strong, you can play Deck Devastation Virus quite easily. Tribute 1 Dark Monster with 2,000 or more attack. Check your opponent's hand, all monsters they control, and all cards they draw until the end of their 3rd turn after this card's activation, and destroy all those monsters with 1,500 or less attack. So, goodbye Honest, goodbye any crappy Lightsworn, goodbye... what do we want here? Like any plant stuff, any Raikos, any it's just ridiculous. You're gonna need to side Cyber Dragons probably in every matchup, seeing as I'll show you some side cards that people will put in versus you. But this is just a good card. It's a good card in the mirror match. It's a good card versus machines, versus some hero decks, and yeah, no reason not to put it in unless you're putting in more oppressions, of course. Destiny is an excellent card. You're going to want to stop your opponent's back row and preemptively trying to hit what you think they're going to side. So you're going to want to put in a Destiny or 2. Nobleman's also a great card because it can help you get through the Raikos, which your opponent will probably be playing since Edison format plays a lot of decks play Raiko and Hamsters. So if they're playing this type of deck, you can side in 1 Nobleman. I wouldn't side in more than 1. And Mask of Restrict is also another great card. However, it says neither player contribute cards. This will include Icarus Attack. So you have to decide if it's really worth it for you to do that. But these are all good cards to put in your side deck. Entirely up to you based on your metagame and your local area. And then people will side stuff. So the main things that will hurt you is Thunder King. Thunder King, it's big. It's bigger than most of your level 4s. Without Kalute, it will beat them down. You can't use Whirlwind to search the Kalutes, and if you try to synchro over it, they can just tribute it to negate it. So this is a very annoying card for against you. Compulsory is another card you have to be careful of, since you're going to try to synchro climb. This card can just stop you right there. And also, it allows them to dodge certain stuff, like if you summon, they summon you bottomless, they have compulsory. So like some decks will probably side some of this stuff. Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, you're playing all darks. And the most annoying card for sure is Consecrated Light. It says neither player can normal summon or special summon dark monsters or declare attacks with dark monsters. This card cannot be destroyed by battle with a dark monster. Also, you take no battle damage from that battle. So they'll put this on the field and you just gotta wait, which is another reason why you would want to side in Cyber Dragons, Fossil Dinos, these kind of things to hopefully get through those, as well as you have your Icarus attacks to deal with this. So it's not the end of the world, but when you don't have it and they're just getting free stuff and doing whatever they want is super annoying. So that card's super annoying. I said it like 3 times, so that's how you know it's really annoying. Some other random cards you could side, possibly Dark Illusion. There's Karma Cuts can come in against you, so you gotta be careful of that. Things like this. That's the side deck stuff. Nothing too crazy. Pretty self-explanatory. You're playing dark stuff. Be careful of things that stop dark stuff. Alright, for the extra deck, it's very straightforward and pretty standardized. We got a Chimera Tech. You're gonna use this with your Cyber Dragons to contact the machines. We got some level 5s. We got some level 6s. This is one of the easiest ones to make in your deck since you play Blizzard, and Blizzard will most likely pull back a Shura or a Bora. So we're gonna play 4 level 6s, easy to make. For level 7s, we got a Black Rose and 2 Armor Master. Now, Armor Master is a very, very good card, but I'll point out that you probably don't want to make this versus Machina because it's 2500 and their Machina guy's 2500, and they can just attack you and then they'll die and then blow up a card. But it's a very strong card either way. This card cannot be destroyed by battle, and you take no battle damage from battles involving this card, which is super annoying to wall out somebody with this stuff. If this card attacks a monster, you can place 1 wedge counter on that monster in the end of the battle step. You can remove all wedge counters from your opponent's monsters and reduce the attack and defense of each monster that had a wedge counter on it to 0 until the end phase. So this is another way you can get through other monsters in the long grind game, but that effect rarely comes up. For 8s, we're going to play 1 Silverwind. This is purely going to be for, I don't even know what this effect does. You never make this actually, you're just always making it through the Vayu and Armor Master to make this one for free. 1 Stardust, 1 Thought Ruler, and Colossal and Darken. So these are basically all the synchros you're going to need. You can have maybe a variation of 1 more Armed Wing instead of maybe one of these. Probably the Thought Ruler, but you might not also need 2 level 5s, but that's the extra deck. I almost forgot. You're going to want to use the ability of Vayu and to target Sirocco and Synchro, and you'll want to make an Armed Wing. Now the reason why this is important is because later on when you let another Vayu die, let's just say this different one, and this dies, and these are both in the graveyard, you can use this one and this one to Synchro Climb into an Armor Master. Now, Armor Master won't have its effect, but it is just a super strong card. And then even later on, if you have made this naturally and it dies and you had a Vayu, you can synchro these cards into the Silverwind for an even bigger monster that comes out for free with Vayu. So it's important to start with the smallest and go into the biggest, which will almost always happen just because Sirocco is probably the first monster that will be destroyed by battle or card effect or whatever, and Vayu comes out from Shura almost every time. We're just going to talk a little bit about the strengths and weaknesses. So quickly, the strengths, very, very simple. Every monster is good. Bora, Shura, Blizzard, Kalut. This deck has literally everything you would want from a top tier deck. Secondly, when you go first, you can just freely get advantage by making them play through Icarus. And if they don't play through Icarus, they only have 1 card to set or 1 monster, and that is also good for you. Whirlwind, excellent, lets you search every turn until they get MST or Raikou it or Kaius it. Very, very strong. And, you know, it's got Synchro Climbing, you can play a Royal Oppression, going first, attack modifiers. Like, yeah, this deck has a wide card pool advantage. I'm trying to think of like the word. Basically, every deck you play against, you have something in your main deck that will be very, very good versus those cards. So there's a reason why this deck is so powerful. But one of the weaknesses, for sure, is if you start falling behind. A lot of these cards require a little bit of other card synergy. So like, for example, if I just top deck a Bora, it's not very good. But if I top deck a Bora with a Kalut in hand, it becomes very, very good. Or I can top deck a Blizzard, but I can just make a raw level 6 and attack's not very good. But if I top deck a Blizzard with maybe a back row like Icarus, it's very, very strong, or something to protect it. So falling behind is very, very bad in this deck. It's hard to come back, even though all your monsters are pretty good. Other decks do have the ability to do unfair things, so you have to be aware of that. And I would say that the weakness is that it's all dark, so there's a lot of easy things to side that would hit most cards in your deck. All right, lastly, for the matchups, we're going to go through a couple of decks. So first of all, we'll use this for the Vayu Turbo. Now Vayu Turbo, they have to remove their cards. They're going to make a little bit better synchros, but generally they have less back row than you. So you're going to want to protect your, properly summoned Armor Master. They can't really push through it. You're going to maybe use the Icarus to whittle them down. Your oppressions are pretty useless. You might want to take those out. And I would definitely just maybe put in Kaikus if you have them. Maybe DD Crows, these kind of things, but basically they're going to rely on making free synchros with their Vayus, and you're just going to try and control the game, and hopefully you don't just get aggroed out. It just kind of sucks when they have more monsters than you do, and you can't really fight them. Next is the mirror match. We're probably going to just keep in most of our stuff, but I'd consider Starlight Roads. You're just generally going to want to try and outmuscle them with your Kalutes, or put them in positions where they have to Kalute something that they don't want to, like a Bora instead of their Shura. You're also going to try to be thinking about how many cards can they special summon, and targeting their whirlwinds in particular. And when they set 2 cards in the end phase, you're going to want to Icarus them instead. And if you can't do that, you're going to want to save it until they try to Icarus you, and then you can chain your cards. So that's kind of, the mirror match is definitely skillful, but there also comes down to who gets what at what times. Next we'll talk about Gladiator Beasts. Now Gladiator Beasts, you have main decked Royal Oppressions. You generally don't want to attack into them. If they have Waboku, you want to make them attack you. That way you'll be able to use Dimensional Prison or Bottomless when they summon, and you'll be able to clear this stuff. You have the Royal Oppression, you have deck Devastation Viruses. This deck is pretty weak versus yours. They have to kind of play through quite a bit. Next we'll talk about Heroes, or Hero Beat. They get to summon big guys that do a lot of stuff, but mainly their Miracle Fusions will make better monsters than yours. However, you also main deck Kalutes, which can get over these cards. You main deck Blizzards, which lets you free synchro into Brionac or Goyo. You play Royal Oppression. A very good matchup for you. Icarus Attack as well. Again, you just got to be careful on where you're making big pushes, and they can't just then after that use an absolute 0 to clear your field again. This one I'll use for Forgs. Now Forgs is kind of a rough matchup because if they get their Heavy Storm or the Giant Tornado, there's not much you can do there. But generally you play a lot of good cards like Deck Devastation Virus, Royal Oppression again. You might want to side in more of those, and you're also going to be looking into playing the Deck Devastation Virus after they've done some of their combo, because if they have Salvage after you Deck Devastation Virus them, it won't really matter. Next we'll talk about Dragons. Now Dragons, most of the decks that you'll see will be these, decks that one-shot you off of the the Red Eyes Metal Darkness Dragon. But in general, you have enough stuff to stall this. You have Royal Oppressions, you have DD Crows. In general, Bottomless, Deep Prisons, Icarus Attack. There's plenty of stuff that can stop this. You just can't get Giant Tornado or Heavy Stormed. But generally, Fossil Dyna as well is quite good. Fossil Dyna is good against the Forgs, against Gladiator Beast. These are all excellent cards. We got Machinas. Now, Machinas is very simple. You have Cyber Dragons in your extra deck. You can contact their machines. This is also a fairly easy matchup for you since you have Kalutes, and even if they destroy your card after, you can whittle them down. You have Royal Oppression, Dimensional Prisons, Bottomless, Icarus Attacks. Like the options are endless for this. I wouldn't be too worried about that. Quick Draw decks. Now, Quick Draw decks, you're just going to abuse the fact that they make tokens. You have Royal Oppression again, Deck Devastation Viruses, very strong. But Bora can just get you free stuff in this matchup because they have to make tokens. Generally, their deck relies on this kind of stuff with Dandelion Abuse. Frog Monarchs or any Monarch type variants, you're just going to abuse the fact that they have to. If they bring a Treeborn Frog, you can pierce it. If they try to summon Monarchs, you're going to want those pulling the rugs. You're going to want the Kalutes in hand to take out their guys, and you don't really want to synchro into something because that's using 2 cards for 1, and then they'll just Caius you back. You want to just go wide, and I mean that by summoning as many guys as you can, and just leaving them at low life points or forcing them to have to make a very bad Monarch play, and then being able to kill them after. Zombies. Zombies is a good deck. You can kind of use Shura to bully your way through, since a lot of the cards like Goblin Zombie need you to be destroyed, and so Shura can kind of get you there while getting your own free advantage. Again, most of these decks, you play Royal Oppression, Deck Devastation Virus. These are very strong cards, but also it's easy for you to protect some of your super annoying cards for them, like Fossil Dynas or Cyber Dragons or whatever else you'd like to summon, the Kaikus, because you play so much back row as well, so you can't forget that. This was like, was the Frog Monarchs? I don't know why I have that as well, but we just went over that. This is plant decks, or particularly Amaryllis decks. Is a harder matchup for sure, but you have a lot of ways you can get through this if you go first and if you go second. Even though they can negate some stuff that target, you generally have a fair amount of outs to it, especially with Kalutes. You can take out quite a bit of this stuff, and they have to make tokens to use this ability effectively, which allows your Bora to just get in free damage. And lastly, we'll talk about Lightsworn. Lightsworn is also a very simple deck to deal with. You're just going to want to use Sirocco and a Gale or a Shura with a Vayu, and then next turn a level 3 to make a Stardust, and you're just going to protect Stardust. And this deck kind of just falls apart. You only have to watch out for Honest. So you want to save those Deep Prisons for when you think they actually have the answer to your Stardust, and then you can Icarus them or Deep Prison them, even Bottomless when they get too strong. Definitely not worried about the Lightsworn matchup, but there's plenty of stuff. This is one of the decks where if it runs hot, they kind of just take over the game and there's not much you can do. So it's fair to side for this deck, but you have plenty of outs as well in the main deck. All right, we've gone through quite a bit here. Hope you guys are still awake. We're going to go through the interactions here. This is the most important thing to get this at a high level. You're going to need to know a lot of this stuff. So the first one we're going to talk about is Vayu and its ability. Now its ability, you cannot Royal Oppression it, since it's not a cost to banish. You have to target a monster first, and then you can banish both cards to get a Synchro Summon for free. So for example, both these are my graveyard. I'll say I activate Vayu's ability, and I'm going to target Sirocco. Your opponent must do something. So if they'd like to DD Crow, they would have to choose a target, and then I will be able to banish both to Synchro Summon a free card. Almost always starts with Armed Wing. So this card's effect is negated. There's a second thing we got to talk about with Vayu. So Vayu's effect negates this card. So it's just a raw 2300 and 1000 attack and defense. But if this card is Book of Moon, the effect will be live again because it will forget its effect of Vayu on this card. So if you attack and they have Book of Moon, you flip it up, you can now use the ability to do piercing, which is very, very strong. It gains 500 and does piercing. And because of that, you can't use Royal Oppression because it's not a cost, which is why you play Royal Oppression in your deck. This just gets you free stuff, and your opponent can't really do much to stop it. Next, we'll talk about Royal Oppression. So Royal Oppression is one of the strongest cards in the deck, and that is because your opponent can't Synchro Summon, but you can. So if you have Royal Oppression, you can use the Vayu, and the Vayu will be able to activate and Synchro Summon. But another one thing you should know is you can actually chain block the Royal Oppression with a Blizzard and a Whirlwind. So let's just say Bora is in the graveyard and I have a Vayu in the deck. You have to have a Vayu in the deck still because you have to be able to search with Whirlwind. So let's just say this is in the deck. I'm going to summon Blizzard and I'll target this. And so Chain Link, since I'm turn player, I get to choose the Chain Links that are happening at the same time. So I will choose Blizzard to be Chain Link 1 and Whirlwind to be Chain Link 2. And so as it resolves, this will be the first and this will be the second. Royal Oppression doesn't have time to activate because it would be technically Chain Link 3 and you cannot Royal Oppression the Whirlwind. So you can actually get your guy for free, although you wouldn't want to synchro after this because your opponent could Royal Oppression, but it will allow you to get a free monster. So Blizzard effect, Chain Link 1, Whirlwind, Chain Link 2, you're going to resolve backwards. I'll add a Vayu to my hand, and then Blizzard will special summon a Bora in defense, and you got through your own oppression, and you got a free card out of that. So this is how you can get an extra, small advantage over your opponent just by properly chain blocking. But again, you have to have Vayu in your deck to be able to search with the Whirlwind. We'll talk about Sirocco here. So Sirocco is important in the mirror match, as well as the fact that you can use it on to deal some fat damage to your opponent. So if my opponent has a set card, I can go summon and special summon this from my hand, use the ability targeting Bora. Now Bora is 3,700 and you're gonna just attack. However, if my opponent has a Blackwing card, let's just say Shura, it's important to remember that Sirocco pumps based on all of the Blackwings on the field. So I will also gain this attack. So you got to be careful when your opponent has a Blackwing deck as well, because they could Sirocco you. So this is very important. Don't forget that. And another thing you can do with Sirocco is setting it. If your opponent has a monster, you can set this. And why that's important is if you have the Icarus attack, you don't want to get bottomless. You want to set this, then set your Icarus attack, and you can then Icarus them. Whereas if you summoned this and they had bottomless, your Icarus attack is dead. Next, we're going to talk about Shura. When Shura attacks and destroys a monster by battle, let's just say it attacks a Shura, you can activate the effect in the damage step, which can't be royal oppressioned, and you can special summon a VU. Now, Shura negates this, even though its effect says you cannot synchro with it. You can synchro with it with anything you have after, and that is because its effect is negated from Shura, even though it says that card. So that's important to realize. You can just make free catasters here, but this monster has to live from the battle. You can't attack another Shura with the Shura. It has to destroy something smaller, and then when that dies, you can activate the effect to bring out a guy. But it's also important to note you can get other cards and attack them as well if you need to deal more damage. But mainly, 99% of the time, you start off by getting a VU out of the deck. That way you're ready to roll with your Sirokkos in the graveyard later on. Lastly, I'll talk about Kalut and Honest. Since this is going to come up in many tournaments for you, you'll have to know how to deal with this. So if I am turn player and I'm attacking a monster and I activate with my player priority Kalut, my opponent can activate in response Honest, and his monster will gain the attack. Now, the chain link will resolve backwards, so his Honest, he'll gain 1700, and then you will gain 1400 on top of this. So you will almost always lose every single time if they have an Honest versus your Kalut, which is probably why that's semi-limited and yours is at 3. However, you'll take less damage this way. But if your opponent attacks and uses their Honest in damage step first with their player priority, you should never use the Kalut, because he will just gain the attack anyways, because it's reverse chain and you're just wasting a card. Unfortunately, you have to take the L on that one. That's how that works. Be very careful. The Kalut is just not as good as Honest. Well, you made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you'll be able to play this at a high level, especially after the interaction stuff, which will put you a little bit above the players that don't know, for sure. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.